This is BBC Radio 4. You're listening to The Powell Movement.
Welcome to another episode of The Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week we're going to talk about what happens to an athlete when their Olympic dreams do not happen. For every athlete on the U.S. ski team, there are countless others who work their ass off their whole lives and they don't make the team. Alex Schlopy is one of these athletes. He missed making the U.S. team by the slimmest of margins, and he didn't have the coping mechanisms in place to really accept this reality. As so many do, Alex turned to drugs and alcohol to forget about not making the Olympic team, and life spirals out of control for him. Before we talk about what leads to darkness, I want you to step into the light and subscribe to my podcast on iTunes or whatever platform you listen to me on. Please follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement and reach out to me with any questions or concerns. My email is mike@thepowellmovement.com. Finally, I need to thank my sponsors. They are evo.com, Rescue Water, 10 Barrel Brewery, The Summit at Snoqualmie, and Unofficial Networks. Please support them and use the codes offered in the ads. Doing that will keep them sponsoring the show. Now, let's talk to Alex Schlopy. How's things in your world, man?
Things are great. Got to go skiing for the first time in a long time today.
When was the last time you were on the hill before today?
Oh, wow. I only went out 8 times last year, and I don't really remember much of it, honestly.
Last year, it sounds like it was a tough year. Normally, I'd ask you what you've been up to lately, but I saw a post on New Schoolers, which pretty much outlined a lot of what's been going on in your life. So I figure we'll save that for later in the conversation. Based on it's going to be heavy, a lot of questions. I mean, it's interesting. It's like a movie, but you happen to be starring in it, which is unfortunate. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I guess skiing for you, you said this is the first time this year. You skied 8 times last year. You don't remember it. But growing up, I mean, you probably put 100 days at least on the hill up until just a couple years ago, I would think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would get up there as soon as possible, whether it was after school or, bright and early in the morning until, there was no sun left and it was 9 o'clock and the lights shut off.
And you were pretty much born into it, right? Like born and raised in Utah, like Park City's your home base?
Yep, born and raised and 25 years local in Park City now.
And you come from a famous family, I'll say. I mean, maybe in niches it's famous. Your dad is not Scott Norwood, but I believe he kicked for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, he did. He was a kicker for the Bills in the 80s. I don't know exactly which years. And he trained with the Seahawks, but never actually played a game with them. I don't really know too much about his career. I'm not so great with football, even though kicking's pretty straightforward. I can't kick a football for shit, so.
Your dad now is like a Hollywood producer, right? Or a Hollywood something?
Yeah, he's actually known for being a first assistant cameraman, which basically pulls the focus and helps set up all the shots. He does that in Hollywood. He's worked on big stuff with Transformers, Ninja Turtles, Iron Man.
Does he know JT Holmes?
Actually, yeah, he worked with him, ironically.
The Transformers.
Yeah, doing the crazy base jump off one of those skyscrapers, I guess.
So your dad does well, I would think. I mean, from being a pro athlete back in the days where they didn't make the money they make today to being in Hollywood, I would assume that anybody who's been in that world for a while is making some money. Your mom was also pretty famous in her own right. Holly Flanders, she was an FIS racer and a few-time Olympian. I don't know if she won any medals, but she was in the Olympics.
Yep, that's correct. I guess she made some good money, but it didn't really last. So my parents actually got divorced when I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
And with the divorce, I ended up being raised by my mom. My dad kind of disappeared for a while. He was working and focused on that.
That fuck you up at all?
What I realized is I had a lot of sour taste towards that emotion of being really sad. And I think I kind of stuck to a lot of bad memories as opposed to the all-around picture. So I think that's kind of what initiated my negative mindset.
But as an 8-year-old, I mean, did it impact you right away? Did it make you troubled? How do you act out? Because I would think you act out at that point.
It's kind of crazy, actually. I've spoken with my mom, and she was actually very depressed at that time. And, I think she was pretty confused and I guess I felt that emotion from her being so young and impressionable. I really think that there was a lot of hurt during that time. I mean, up until recently, I haven't really tried to deal with or make sense of.
You have a brother and sister as well, right?
Yes, sister 4 years older, and my little brother about 8 years younger. So right when he was born is actually when they got the divorce.
Are you guys tight?
Yeah, all of us are really tight. It's kind of a unique family we have. We're all very, what would you call it, mindful of ourselves. Like we're emotional, I guess. It's hard to explain. Very much so each our own person, I guess, would be the best way to put it.
Are your sister and brother into skiing, snowboarding as well?
Yeah, both my sister and brother like to ski. My sister was a bit competitive with racing growing up, but she hasn't pursued it. And my brother also he kind of plays around with skiing and snowboarding, and he just enjoys it. He does some border cross competitions, but he just likes doing stuff for fun.
And then you have a cousin, Eric Schlopy, who's also the bronze medalist in the Olympics. And then he married an Olympic medalist who won like 4 medals in swimming. Are you tight with that side of the family too?
Yeah, well, growing up, I was. In the past few years, I honestly have not been tight with anybody.
Yeah, I'm sure you've distanced yourself and they've been worried about what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't really realize that. I didn't think anybody was paying any attention to, what happened or where I was. And in reality, everybody was missing me.
Yeah, but that's later on in the story. So you start skiing at 2, and your mom being a skier, she wanted you to ski as soon as possible. And in terms of skiing, I mean, were you a good skier from the start?
I guess so. My parents got me on skis initially when I was 1 year old, when I first got on skis. And up until I was about 12, I wasn't really into it. It was, I was cold and all that shit. But at 12, I met Josh Christensen, and we both started getting into slopestyle and the free ride side of things. And pretty much him and I skied every day, trying to learn all the shit we were watching and seeing in the magazines.
Other than skiing, did you play any other sports? I know gymnastics was a huge part of your life, and you had trampolines in your yard, but were there any team sports?
I played soccer for a bit, but I was pretty well known for not showing up to practice and just playing the games.
You were that kid, huh?
I was definitely that kid. And unfortunately, I was good when we played the games, so I started kind of a bad habit there.
When you're good at sports young, people start telling you you're great and you get special treatment like not having to go to practice. That probably happened your whole life because you were really good at a lot of different things. Gymnastics was pretty serious for you too, right? Like that was the thing?
Yeah, I guess when I was 8 years old, when life was kind of crazy and changing a lot, my mom didn't really know what to do with me because I was crazy, had all this energy and anger. So she threw me into gymnastics, where immediately I just saw people doing all these cool tricks, and I was like, fuck, I want to do that. That looks like so much fun. And I ended up being really good at it naturally. So yeah, that was kind of my first area where I was able to focus all my energy and craziness.
It sounds like you had 2 trampolines in your backyard and you went just fucking crazy on those growing up.
Yeah. After school every day, I would get home and start working on new tricks. I really had no clue what the hell I was doing. I'd try a backflip and, try and twist my arm or whatever, put my arm down and spin, and started learning like that. And then next thing you know, I was put into gymnastics and started competing.
And were you the best on your gymnastics team too?
I was younger. Actually, you want to know who the best was? Funny story. McCrae Williams.
Huh.
Yeah, he was really damn good.
And was the program something that had aspirations of grandeur in the gymnastics world? I don't know what you aspire to do other than the Olympics, but there's probably other contests you want to win too.
Yeah, I would think so. I really didn't pay attention to the competition side. I was really all about competing with myself and in a way, trying to be better than the other guy, but not to beat him, but just to see if I was able to bring my skills to that level and above.
Okay. And I'm going to say, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds kind of like an entitled youth where people are telling you you're good at sports and you are good at sports. Would the words like cocky, self-absorbed, and not giving a fuck describe you at that point?
At that point, I wouldn't say I was quite at that mind state. I had a lot of hurt, and that was kind of my way of filling that hole of having no confidence and not really caring about myself. I felt like I was responsible for everything that's gone wrong, and that made me feel better, and that was my only way of filling that void.
Like, are you a good winner and not a sore loser?
I would say, yeah, to me, either way, it was kind of the same thing to me. I almost felt like shameful for winning a lot of times. I felt like I didn't deserve it, to be honest.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Something happens when you're like 11 or so where you realize you can take gymnastics to the snow. I think your coach maybe tells you about that, or how does that whole thing come down where you're taking your gymnastic skills? Because the air awareness that you get in gymnastics pays dividends in skiing, especially if you grew up skiing and know how to work your edges. So it should have been a smooth transition into it, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And my coach was Mike Hanley, who is best known for coaching Nick Gepper and Wendell's Academy. And so as I was growing up doing the gymnastics, he was my coach, and so he was so excellent at his job. And I really got good at gymnastics, and he started telling me about skiing and the free ride thing and how I would love that, because it kind of took away the structure and all the stuff I didn't like about gymnastics, where perfection was key. He showed me that you could do this other sport where you can kind of express yourself and, you know, use these tricks and that kind of energy that you've been working on. And it just all clicked the second I started free skiing.
Are you trying tricks within a couple days once you start hitting the jumps and figure out the takeoff and landing? Is it like, okay, now I can start throwing stuff because I know from gymnastics how to do this?
Absolutely, but I wouldn't do the tricks very well at first.
No, I'm sure they wouldn't look great, but you could land them.
Yeah, well, the first backflip I tried, let's just say I did 1.5 and landed on my head, but it was in a powder, and so all good. I was just so stoked. And then the next one I did was perfect-ish. Yeah, so it's say quick to learn, but maybe not great at the bat.
Before I get any further, I have to talk about some sponsors real quick. My first sponsor is evo.com. Evo is the go-to website to buy your skis, snowboards, bikes, surfboards, outerwear, and clothing. They also happen to be the best retail experience in the country, and you can find their stores in Seattle, Denver, and Portland. They carry the best brands in-store and online, and they hire the most knowledgeable and approachable staff who live these sports, and they give back to both the community and charity. Evo.com offers free shipping on orders over $50, a no-hassle return policy, and just for listening to the Powell Movement, you use the code capital TPM, the number 10 at checkout. You're going to get 10% off your entire order from Evo. My next sponsor is Rescue Water. They are proactive recovery, and if you don't know what that means, I want you to try something for me. Next time you get a workout in, drink a Rescue Water instead of a sports drink. You'll find that while the sports drink will wet your whistle, Rescue Water will truly hydrate you. You can feel the difference. Rescue Water was born out of the mountains with a belief that hydration is key to shredding all day long. Over the years, it's proven to be more effective than just about anything when it comes to getting you hydrated after a workout, a day on the mountain, or a big night at the bar. Head on over to rescuewater.com and enter the code RescueWaterTPM, and you'll get a 20% discount off a 12-pack. Rescue Water is also available on Amazon and Amazon Prime. So that's it for my sponsors. Now we'll get back to your life. I say that every show, but it works. And we're talking about you getting into free skiing, getting into the park, and transferring gymnastics to the snow. And on top of all that, you're like full of energy, right? When you're young, you have a ton of energy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was crazy, all aspects. I didn't really pay attention in school. I actually understood a lot of the content they were teaching me. I just didn't feel like I needed to express to them that I knew it. And basically, I was a punk. So, you know, I'd sneak out at night when I was 12 years old and just go run around the town and just, I didn't really feel like disrupting property or anything. I just felt like being kind of free, I guess.
When you were sneaking out, you weren't doing anything, so you're not breaking anything. Were you drinking, smoking, doing anything like that?
Well, okay, at first we went toilet papering, which is pretty stupid, honestly.
Yeah, I've done it before.
Yeah, so that was kind of our thing. And growing up, I was honestly kind of a pussy when it came to drugs and alcohol, and I wanted nothing to do with any of it.
Toilet papering was your thing. Like, you did that more than just a couple times. It was like, that was your stamp out there, was the toilet paper.
I don't want to talk about it. It's embarrassing.
We don't have to talk about it that much, but I want to know, how many rolls was the most you ever used on a house, car, or whatever?
So we would go through the town from the top to the bottom, going through the local public restrooms and taking the big industrial size rolls.
But they're only like single ply, though, so they can break real easy, I would think.
Yeah, it's a technique. If it was really windy, you could just hold it on your hands and the wind would take the toilet paper and do the job for you beautifully. Yeah, we got high tech with it.
If you were to ballpark, would it be like 100 regular rolls of Charmin?
Yeah, I think, one of our best jobs was probably about 100 Charmins.
Do you ever get caught or get in trouble for any of your antics as a youth?
I'm a fast runner, so no.
Did any of your crew get caught other than you?
Yes.
Anybody sell you out?
Nah, they stood true to the streets. They're good.
And we don't need to know who they were. The toilet paper crew of Park City in maybe, 2006?
Yeah, shit, yeah. Let's call it then. Yeah, TPPC.
That was just the beginning of the chaos in your life, but we're still not even there yet, because at 14, you go to the Vermont Open, you win that thing, which has to be a huge confidence builder for you, even though it sounds like you're not really up. There's probably not that many huge ups, but winning the contest at least has to give you at least the boastful pride of, hey, I did this.
Funny story behind that. I was really bummed out. I went out there on like one of my mom's friends' Sky Miles, and Josh Christensen, Chris Laker, and some other dudes got a place, and Josh and I were like super tight, but he didn't really want me to stay there. So I was like 13 years old, and I had to go ask around at the resort once I landed because I wasn't with anybody and no adults. So I actually had to ask random people if I could sleep at their house. So I ended up sleeping at this one dude's house who worked there in his boiler room, and then I ended up winning the contest. So I felt pretty good, kind of like, yeah, fuck you guys.
And I was going to make a bad joke about you asking people to find places to stay and how that helped you on later in life, not feeling bad about that outreach. But I guess I did make that joke. So you win the Vermont Open, though. That has to be fucking huge for you. I mean, you've got a name for sure. I mean, people know the Schlopy name and that you're an up-and-coming kid. But to win the contest, who else is competing that you place ahead of?
So actually, I won the juniors when I was 13. And then the next year, I won the men's because you had to enter the open division. Well, so that was really cool. But the first year, I don't really remember who I beat that year, but the next year I remember beating Tanner Rainville and I think Garai Dadali. And those two guys, I looked up to them. So I was kind of mind blown.
Are you into the scene too? Are you like on New Schoolers and reading the magazines and that kind of stuff?
Everything, dude. I probably taped like naked chicks on skis or something just for like ski porn. Like all I cared about.
And after you win that Vermont Open, do you start to get some sponsors?
Yeah. I was riding for Dina Star and Level Gloves and Spider and Scott goggles. Yeah, I think I was riding for all those guys. It was all crazy. I felt really good about kind of earning things on my own because I didn't feel like I shouldn't be given anything is kind of how I felt.
Nobody can give you anything in these types of contests, which is the beauty of it, is it just doesn't happen. You do have a name, and that name can get you a lot more exposure if you do well. But if you don't do well, it's just like, well, that was a Schlopy. How much money are you making as a 14-year-old?
See, I think ski sponsor was like 10 grand. Yeah, I was definitely making under 20 grand.
Okay, but you're 14 years old.
That's a ton. Yeah, I was buying all my homies Burger King.
I would think you felt like a baller with money coming in at that age.
Dude, yeah. I mean, if they had like, strip clubs for minors, I would have run that.
You also film with TGR at this point.
Yeah, actually.
And that has to be even more mind-blowing because they are a fixture in what the sport and culture is and have helped define it since before you were born.
Oh,
their athletes, yeah. I'm sure, are taped on your walls and now you're in their movie.
Yeah, that was kind of like starstruck times every person that was there because, I rode out with like Dash Long and I believe Wiley Miller. And that trip was kind of skiing in a nutshell because there were such amazing highs and such terrible lows, because I watched Wiley break his heel and his face. And then right after that, Tanner and I were arguing about who should guinea pig this jump. And this is the jump that nobody's seen, where Tanner broke both his tibia plateaus and blew both his knees. I was standing maybe 10 feet away from where he landed because I won the Rochambeau and he had to drop in first. And we thought it was going to be super mellow, no problem. And I still felt guilty about this because he's sitting there like, oh, you're the young buck, you'll be fine. I'm like, well, you're the veteran, so you got this, And then he overshot it and started screaming bloody murder hell, dude. Scared me for like ever.
I guess in everything that you've done in your entire life, there's a lot of risk, but this risk is a good, clean risk. And sometimes, you lose the Rochambeau and shit happens. I heard a rumor that you got a red camera when you were 15 years old. Is that true?
No. I think it was when I was around 18, actually.
Was that like a gift?
My dad actually helped Jim Gennard, or the guy who started Oakley, and also Red. My dad helped him kind of develop some features on the Red cam. And he also knew that I was skiing. So when we started our film company, Rotate Film Group, he kind of gifted us a camera to kind of push out content to help Red. And they used some of the footage we shot at their display at one of the trade shows. So yeah, it was like kind of a trade, I guess.
Yeah, you're giving them content. They're giving you a camera. And how much is one of those cameras?
It was a gift. Shoot, around then, I think there were maybe 40, 50 grand.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
And then we got a bunch of custom lenses from Panavision through my dad's connections. So yeah, a lot of the stuff we have is priceless, which is pretty dope.
I guess it's the perks of having a dad in the film industry.
Yeah, I chose that. Good choice.
Were your parents disappointed that you weren't a team sports fan, or was your dad?
No, not at all. I think once they realized I was really passionate about free skiing, and, when my dad re-entered my life and stuff, he was always a very good, positive influence when, once he was around. But
was he gone a lot? Like when you say re-entered, was he gone for years?
Yeah, I mean, in my memory, I guess I don't really remember talking to him for like 4 years, 4 years, maybe 5.
And he's in his 40s working in Hollywood after being an NFL player?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I wonder what his life was like. Probably pretty fun.
Who knows?
So he's in and out of your life. I can see that being really tough. Another thing that happens, everything's going like a dream. Your career's kind of starting to really take off. People know who you are. And then you're like in a bad car crash. You get a major concussion. I don't know what else happens, but tell us about that.
Yeah, that car accident is kind of a huge turning point in my life.
How old are you?
I was 15 years old, and I was going into a winter where I had just been invited to the U.S. Open for half pipe and slopestyle, which was really cool. It was a huge achievement for me. And going into that winter, I was leaving a friend's house. He was kind of having a party, and I was trying to get home before school. And there was a French-Canadian kid driving. I think there were 8 of us in the car. I'm pretty sure he was either had been drinking or smoking pot. And we had stopped off at the Canyons Mountain Resort, and he was trying to do donuts or drifting in the parking lot. And we hit a big boulder, and we flipped a couple times. And where I was sitting shotgun, and the roof where I was sitting actually crushed down to the seat. And yeah, I guess they looked at it and were pretty surprised that I survived. But I got a really, really, really bad concussion.
Man, that's like a bad after-school special. Hey, kids, here's what you don't do. You don't go drinking, drive in a mountain town, do donuts at 2 o'clock in the morning going crazy, and this is what's going to happen to you. Don't ever do this. You will die.
Exactly. I'm saying sit at home, eat your Wheaties, and watch Rugrats. Like, don't do that.
Whenever you get into a moving vehicle with a dude who's probably 17 years old, who thinks he's badass, a bunch of kids who think they're all badasses. I'm sure you're all in the mountains getting rad on all different shit, and I'm sure he wants to do that in the car too. Finds out he's not as good as a driver as he thought, and he hurts a lot of his friends. Could have ruined your career, but he didn't. and you get back to skiing in 2008, but it sounds like you weren't yourself mentally. Was the concussion that bad? What are the effects of that?
Yeah, so the concussion was really, really bad. So I don't really remember anything for about 2 or 3 weeks beforehand. And I started developing severe anxiety, panic attacks, vertigo, agoraphobia, agoraphobia. I sat in my basement with the lights off in my mom's house for a year because I couldn't go outside in the light. And then I had to drop out of school 2 or 3 times and go to different schools. And then I had to drop out of those schools. So all in all, I ended up having to go back to school 3 times. So super senior, then super, super senior, and then super, super, super senior, because I didn't really want to settle for a GED.
Did you still get back to skiing even though you were messed up in the head?
I kind of missed a key part to that story. I think about 2 to 6 months, let's say, after the accident. I was training half pipe at rec, and I just learned my first double that day on the jumps. And then I was training half pipe, and I was doing a cork 9, and I think I over rotated or to 1080, landed in the bottom of the half pipe, and completely blew my knee and got another concussion.
And that concussion's the one that made you sit in the basement for like a year, right?
Yes, exactly. So I think it was the 2 back-to-back concussions, the car accident being far worse, and then the half pipe one being pretty significant as well.
And it was to the point where it sounded like you felt like you were upside down when you were sitting in chairs, and vertigo was hitting you and you just couldn't do anything.
Yeah. And then also on top of that, I had severe migraines where I would lose vision, and I'd always be reading something or, looking at something, and then I'd notice something would just disappear, and then it would grow until I couldn't see at all. And then that would pretty much immediately go away. And then I'd have a horrible headache where I'd be throwing up and couldn't move for about a day or 2.
Damn, that's crazy. And you're 17 years old at this point or something like that?
16, yeah. And then, I was still trying to train. But when I'd train, I'd have to hold on to trees. When I was on a slope, it felt very awkward. I couldn't stop without holding on to something because it felt like I was falling off the earth, if you will, and panicking. Yeah, and I was trying to train and work through it because I did not want to accept that. I had a doctor back then tell me that I had to quit skiing. I had to quit doing everything.
Do you have a social life at this time? Are you going out? Are you doing anything? Drugs, alcohol? Does any of that start?
So around 15 years old, I started drinking. At first, I just kind of tried it. And then once I found the feeling of getting drunk, I started getting shit-faced.
Is that just weekends, though?
Yeah, just weekends. There was a huge party scene in Park City, kind of unlike anywhere I've ever seen. Every weekend, there was a huge party going on at someone's house. And, there's a lot of money here. And just a lot of people who just wanted to get fucked up.
That's part of the culture of skiing, too, is for the people coming in the towns as well as the people who live there. That's the beauty of it. And it's a curse as well for some, is you can do that every single day. You can après and go into the night every day. And you don't even have to go super late. It can be done by 11. You sleep and be up for first chair again the next day. The lifestyle is a brutal one if you like it too much.
Absolutely, yeah. And, with age, it seemed to only get worse and more crazy. So,
yeah, but at first, it probably doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's getting better and you're having fun. When you're 15 and drinking to probably when you're 20. I mean, the drinking's just something you do to have fun, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was like social thing. Everyone, you'd go get drunk, play beer pong. Everybody's trying to make out with girls or, whatever. All in good fun. Nobody really ever seemed to consider it a problem at that age.
You find out later in your 20s when it becomes a problem, or even later than that sometimes. You eventually get your shit together. I mean, around 2010, it seems like you're starting to feel like yourself again. And before I even say this, in types of personality, I talked about being like cocky and self-absorbed and whatever. What were you like outwardly, when you're like 15 to 18? Because it seems like from the outside that you might have a big personality. And from hearing your story, you were probably hurting on the inside, but making it look like you weren't by being a badass in your eyes. I don't know if you can elaborate on that or tell me I'm full of shit or whatever.
I guess honestly, I don't know how the outside perspective, I don't know what they made of me, because in my mind, I was pretty inconfident. I don't know. I kind of hated myself. And by trying to set goals and achievements, and continuing to progress, it continued to fill that void and kind of give me confidence enough to put on a face where I was super happy all the time, or, potentially cocky.
I'm guessing there's depression in, I pretty much know that there is in your story, but you say that you hate yourself at this point. When you're like on top of the world, you're a kid from a family of successful athletes who is in this dream world of Park City, who's doing really well. And it's hard for me to understand the hate yourself part. But when you hate yourself, what do you think? You hate yourself because your dad's not around? What do you hate yourself about? I don't get it, but I understand. I don't understand depression.
Yeah. So what I've kind of boiled, or I guess I've looked back into it, and what I've decided is I really think that down deep, I thought I was responsible for my parents' breakup, and all the depression, and it felt horrible, and I don't know why I thought that or felt that, but in retrospect, I really think that's what I was feeling. So I feel like by doing these contests and stuff, I was kind of trying to fill the void where I was trying to impress my dad and make him happy, so that I could be accepted, I guess.
Sports is the easy way to do it if you're really good at the sport, which you happen to be. He's got to take notice.
Yeah, exactly. And along the lines of that story, once I actually did well at Dew Tour one year, and then I guess I got fifth maybe, and it was in Vermont, and my dad was starting to tag along a little bit, or, put some finances into my skiing. So he started, kind of showing that he was a part of it and supporting it. And then after X Games and all that, it was, just too much with everyone.
When you see your dad starting to support it when he's been gone for so long, I would think that could almost piss you off too, because you're like, you haven't been around at all, and now you see me doing well.
Yeah, actually. So once again, in retrospect, I've come to the conclusion that I didn't think that anybody cared about me until I actually did well in contests. And then it seemed like everybody was on my nuts. I'm not going to lie.
It does happen, and you have to be able to filter through who are your real friends and real people that care about you and who are blinded by your success. And I think you find that out when you're not in the spotlight anymore. That's really when it happens.
Yeah.
You're not living at home anymore, right? Do you move out? And because you've got more money coming in, I would think at this time, by the time you're 19, 20, you've got to move out of your mom's house and find yourself a place where you can bring chicks back to, I would think.
No, I had all my techniques to sneak everybody in and out. But the first time I moved out of my mom's house, I went to Colorado for 6 months. And I was actually living with Matt Walker and Andrew Hathaway and like all the robotic power monkey dudes, Sean Jordan, my boy Chris Waker from Vermont, like 12 people all in one house up in Blue River above Breck.
Was that just ridiculous?
Yeah, it was pretty insane. That was actually the season that I won X Games and all those other contests.
2011.
Yeah, exactly. 2011. And behind the scenes, we were just, chilling up in this like huge kind of like ski bum mansion, just kind of raging. A bunch of people would come up from Colorado and stuff. And that's kind of where I was able to like fit in socially, I felt like. But in order to do so, I felt like I had to be under the influence.
Just alcohol, or is there anything else that you're under the influence at this point?
See, at that point, only alcohol. I really didn't care for weed, just drinking and partying and kind of trying to continue that adrenaline that I got on the hill, but at home and with partying.
Are you getting blackout drunk?
Yeah, honestly, right off the bat, I really did not care to get like buzzed. I always wanted to go as hard as I could, no matter what. Skiing, partying, 100% or zero.
So the biggest year of your life, 2011, I think you win the X Games Big Air Gold. You win the FIS Slopestyle World Championship. This is when you're like really starting to booze as hard as you possibly can, but everything seems to be working out, so there's no problem.
Yeah, so let's go through this. So X Games, well, I could not even believe I was invited. And initially I was only invited to slopestyle, and I could not put a run down. I had plans to try a dub 16, a new trick in slopestyle that hadn't been done, but failed to jump before the last and couldn't do it. So I got really mad at myself and pointed at the big air jump, and I was like, that's where I'm going to try it. And I hadn't been invited yet, so I was begging because I knew that I think Wallish and maybe someone else were going to drop out, and there might be a spot or two available. And Chris Schuster actually gave that spot to me. And yeah, that ended up winning rookie year at X Games, going from, I'd won Dumont Cup the year before, and, which is kind of a high level open event. And then going to win the biggest event in skiing the following year. It was crazy.
Insane. I mean, that's your Olympics. Growing up, that's what you looked at as the pinnacle of your sport.
Absolutely, yeah. X Games was and is like the top of the top. I watched it passionately. It was my favorite everything, all sports, all of it. I loved it.
You also went to the Yoon Olsen event one year, right? Was that 2010 before the X Games when you went?
Yeah. So following the Dumont Cup, where I won out in Maine, Simon had some people over to his house afterwards, and Tom and Simon announced that I was going to be part of the Team USA video out there in Aura, which was super dope. Things kind of just escalated quickly, if you will.
That's a contest where you fly in. They give you pretty much a key to the city. You don't even fly in. You fly in, then they helicopter you to the mountain. Then you have the keys to the city. You can do whatever you want. And then when I say keys to the city, I think they do give you a key where everything's free, right?
Maybe. I don't know.
That much of a blur?
You have to be there to know, man. All right. I don't tell no secret. I guess I don't really remember. I probably had a key.
The hospitality to you, the athlete, had to feel like no other event you ever went to.
Oh, yeah, dude. I mean, people are crazy there. I don't know what they're doing. Crazy.
Move past the 2011 year. That's your big year up until, that's your big year. There's probably a ton of stories that you have on the tip of your tongue. Let me hear the craziest of crazy that happened to you in that year.
All right. So I went from making not that much money to way too much money for a kid who was 18 years old.
How much?
And insecure. If I had to ballpark, so I just signed with Monster Energy for 30 grand. Oakley was 25 grand. It was all these contracts, but what really made it crazy was the incentives, because I maxed out every one of my contracts. So I maxed out, I guess, Nordica, Monster, and Oakley. It had to be 200 plus something grand.
They're matching all your winnings?
For all the events, yeah. So that happened, and come World Championships, so after X Games, immediately fly to Park City and start training the second you get to the parking lot. And then start doing that. I was not into it, not stoked. It was cold. I was being just a pussy. And I remember talking to the Nordica rep, Sam Beck, at the top of the event and being like, dude, do I have to do this? I really don't want to do this. And he's like, hey, here, have some coffee. And I was like, hell yeah, I'll have some coffee, chipper up, try and ski. First run, so I practiced, I did straight airs and then went inside, sat in the lodge because it was way warmer.
Straight airs just because you were being a bad sport?
No, I wasn't really complaining about it. I was just kind of being a wimp. I was like, it's cold, and I trained in my head, so I felt like I pretty much got it. But in reality, I did my first run and I had no clue what I was doing. I actually forgot what I was doing, I think, and just turned around in the middle of one of the features or fell on something easy. Then I got really motivated. I was like, really, you're just going to give up and not try? At least try to land your run. That was my self-talk. So I was really hard on myself, and I ended up doing a pretty good run. I still don't think it was that great, but I ended up winning. Just not that great in my person. I'm really picky. They're really hard on myself, I guess. Long story short, win the World Championships. And at this point, I'm like, I didn't think I deserved all this, money and like, quote unquote fame. So I go out to the bars with a fake ID. I get bottle service, and they give me a bottle, and in Utah, they put it in a cage. So the server actually has to come and uncork it, if you will, and pour it in, the 1 ounce shot limit or whatever they have here.
Okay.
So I was trying to smash the cage because I was like, that's fucking bullshit. I paid for this. I want it. So then they come over and they're like, why are you smashing the cage? I'm a punk at this point. Like when I got drunk is when, like the cocky asshole Alex came out.
Okay.
And so this is like just some crazy animal, that I hate to even bring up because I don't want to relate to him. He's, but it's me. So they come over and I jump up on the table and I grab the hanging light and start swinging around the bouncer's head. Like,
Yeah.
He grabs me and he's just like, dude, I'm going to end you, you fucking little punk. And brings me up to the front door. There's like cops waiting and the bouncer, and they're like, hey man, we need to see your ID. And I'm like, which one? Like total idiot. And, I hand him like both my IDs. And they're like, dude, you were fucking stupid. Like, what? And then Danya Asali came over and told the cops, like, yo, give him a break. He just won this event. He's just going crazy with like Stoke. Basically, she saved me from like going to jail, even though I was like, I guess I was 18. I went to jail. So I went back to my hotel where the U.S. team had bought me a room. And I was so drunk, I fell asleep in the parking garage where the Nordica rep came and woke me up. Jesus. And I went up into my room and I threw up in the sink and ripped the toilet off, I guess, and left the water on, and I flooded 3 floors at one of the nicest hotels in Deer Valley. I had to pay $5 to $10,000 out of pocket in damages.
Damn, and that just starts a reputation too when that happens.
Yeah, bad. Not cool.
It's unfortunate because really, if you look at it now, if you would have gotten arrested that night and gone to jail for like 10 crimes and had to figure out how to get out, you probably did a lot of things they could charge you with.
Oh, yeah.
It might have been better for you in the long run.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say, damn, I wish they fucking did that then.
Then you would have had to learn a hard lesson at 18 that would crush you, but at the same time, it might have prevented things later on in life. So I blame Dania for everything.
It gets much, much, much worse than that, even around that same time behind the scenes.
How does it get worse?
There was an incident where I was at a concert. It was Common, the rapper. It was a free concert down in Salt Lake City, which is about 20-30-minute drive from Park City. I drank a bit of like rum or some cheap rum or whatever, like a bunch of high school friends. We all went out.
Plastic bottles?
Yeah, dude, I had one of those Dasani bottles or whatever, just like crinkled up and like stuck it in my pants. So after the concert, I'm running across the street to get back to where my friend had parked or was going to pick me up. And I was like the last one to run across the street. There was like hundreds of people. And this cop on the side of the road, like flashed his lights or whatever. So I just walked the other direction and I thought like, there's hundreds of people. No way. Like he's going to single me out. This gets kind of crazy at this point where the cop actually parked his car around the corner and he chased me down and beat my head into the cement. And I got a concussion and broken nose and stuff like that.
Because you were running away, though?
No, actually, this is one time I chose not to run away. And that's why I run away from the cops. But not anymore, hypothetically.
That was an unjust act by the police officer, and you should not have been forced to the ground like that?
Absolutely, yeah. There are other times where it would have been much more appropriate. Let's just say that.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I chose not to press charges. Well, A, because his car wasn't there. And B, because, I was pretty much at fault as I was drinking underage. But the beating was definitely fucking unnecessary.
So you did get arrested, though, right? I would think.
No, I had to go to the hospital, actually.
But no arrest? You got out of the hospital and went home?
I think I had to deal with an underage drinking ticket. Throughout the whole time, I got 2 of those, where it should have been a lot more, I guess. Just being a punk. And what's crazy is this is pretty normal for Park City at this time. pretty much all my friends, same or what worse, much worse.
Yeah, but it sounds like the level that you're taking it and the blackout drunkenness that you're getting, while it's normal to get those tickets, there's definitely nothing normal about your drinking, but it seems like it because that's the culture.
Exactly. I had a very, very dumb and skewed perspective of what was right.
I'm going to jump into another set of sponsors, and the first one here is 10 Barrel Brewery. And they support a whole lot of things in action sports and will tell you throughout the season some of the events that they're sponsoring. But what you need to know about the brewery is they brew beer, they drink beer, and they have fun doing it. They're located in Bend, Oregon. They like to get after it on powder days and maximize the sun in the summer by drinking outside. They support a lot of things in the snow space, and none more important than protect our winters. Right now, they're donating 1% of sales of their current seasonal Pray for Snow Ale and their trail beer to Jeremy Jones's Protect Our Winters Foundation. My takeaway here is the more you drink, the more they donate. Please check out the 10 Barrel Brewery online at 10barrel.com or get the full 10 Barrel experience at one of their pubs in Bend, Portland, Boise, Denver, and San Diego. My next sponsor is one that I visit every week. They are the Summit at Snoqualmie, and they have been my go-to ski destination in Washington since I've lived here. And why? Well, I've mentioned it before, but they give me a free pass. And if everybody else gave me a free pass in the state of Washington, I would still end up at the summit. The reason? Well, it's 45 minutes away from Seattle, which makes powder weekday mornings a reality, and that's not all. They have amazing terrain for every ability level. And if you don't ski or snowboard, well, they have tubing, and it's pretty rad. On top of that, there's new bars and restaurants, and it's home to the Washington State Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. Life is too short to waste all your time driving to the ski resort. Head on over to thesummitatsnoqualmie.com, look at the season pass options. When you find the right one for you, head to checkout, enter the code POWEL18, and we're going to give you preseason rates on your season pass. Those are my sponsors, and it's a crazy year all around in 2011. Your results are through the roof. Your finances are through the roof. Your drinking is through the roof. And then in 2012, you go to X Games, you've got to be at an all-time high, and you end up blowing your knee.
I think at that point, I started kind of shying away. And like I said, I kind of felt like I just did not deserve it. I was giving a lot of money away to friends, buying people stuff. I just felt like I wanted everyone to be equal. And I didn't really want to feel like I was better than anyone else. I wanted everyone around me to, be the same, I guess. Sounds crazy now that I say it, but at the time it felt right, so I just don't really know what the hell I was doing.
What kind of car do you have at this time? I'm just trying to see, how do you spend your money? Because are you giving it away? Are you blowing it on yourself too?
Oh, yeah. See, I've had 8 cars, I think. At this point, I guess maybe my first Audi or my first truck, the second truck.
And your trucks are just like big ass, like the biggest machines on the road.
Dude, tiny penis screaming all over it, horrible. Yeah.
So you're a total dick with your money at the same time giving it away to your friends. And when I say a dick, I mean...
Yeah, total dick,
You're spending it like a guy who just made his new money and needs a Porsche.
Total fucking idiot. Yeah, exactly.
So you're living that lifestyle, boozing, spending money. I mean, it's got to be pretty fun. But, that's me saying it's pretty fun. You're probably still all messed up in the head and like feeling you don't deserve stuff.
What I think is like, I just, I really wanted to feel like I was normal and stuff. And like that being normal in my mind back then was the party craziness that I was growing up in Park City. So like at these events, I kind of started focusing more on partying and shit. And, I'd be hungover and not able to make practice or I'd still do it. I'd still compete, like not feeling good because I just wanted to pursue both things, and it really messed me up because super hard on myself about not doing well at contests. And when that would happen, I would be super happy pretending, but I was really hard on myself. So I'd go back and just get fucked up. And I didn't really realize why I was doing it. I just thought it was for fun.
That's your lifestyle. You do that every day. And the goal is the Olympics, right?
Yep. I set a terrible goal that year. One I regret more than anything in the world. So written on paper, it was, I'm going to win the Olympics or I'd rather be dead.
And that's just how you do everything, like 110% or shoot me in the face if I don't do what I'm supposed to do?
I guess in reality, it wasn't really about winning. It was about doing well for myself. I mean, there were many times where, I didn't get a result and I was just as happy or even more happy than when I'd win. And there's times when I won where I really wasn't that happy because I didn't think I performed as well as I could.
In all of those times, you're still going to appray hard as shit and then go big that night.
Exactly. And kind of the whole time I was trying to like pretend, for my image, super happy, like straightforward kid, like even could be perceived as like, religious Mormon. Like, I don't know. It was a facade.
Looking at you, if you were to have gone to the Olympics and stood on that podium, you're one of those guys that they would have made a star. You're like a clean-cut All-American kid who no one would have ever predicted the end of the story, because from your heritage and on paper, it's like everything's going great in your world. And then all the things that you don't see on paper, they're as bad as it gets and just getting worse. So really, I mean, we don't need to talk about the lead up. You won an event, you placed second at an event, I think. It was really close, and it comes down to they have 3 selections and a discretionary selection. You're not one of the original 3. There are 3 people that they're looking at. Tom Wallish, which the whole ski world wants because it's Tom Wallish. And then there's you and Joss. And no one wants you and Joss. Everybody wants Tom first and foremost, which has got to be frustrating.
Hell no, dude. Tom's the shit, dude. I really was like, I didn't really understand how it really worked, I guess. So, I mean, honestly, like after I won that one World Cup near the end, the second to last one at Park City when they're doing the back-to-back contest for the last chance qualifiers, kind of.
Yep.
After I won the first one, they were kind of like you're going, kind of. And I was sitting there like, no, there's another contest tomorrow. Like, we can't rule out anything that could happen. And ironically, my dad put it to me this way: in order for me to not have gone, Joss Christensen this is as far as Olympic points or FIS points or whatever they're called. And so Joss would have had to won, which he did, and I would have had to have gotten 8th or worse, and I got 8th. So I think Joss Christensen was destined to go and destined to win, and he deserved it hands down more than anybody on earth.
I totally agree with you. I will also say what makes it interesting in that space is that you and Joss came up together. I mean, were you guys best friends at some point?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we hung out every day growing up. We started skiing together, probably kissed his first girl, like in my kitchen. I don't know, that kind of shit.
That almost has to be bittersweet because you're so stoked for Joss, but at the same time, your goal is definitely not going to happen. And what does that feel like, and what does that do to you?
Bittersweet would be the best way to put it. I kind of looked at Joss when I was told that I wasn't going to go, and I was like, hey, Joss, you better go fucking win, because that's what I was going to do. And it sounds mad cocky and shit, but I didn't mean it. I meant that shit. I meant Joss, go fucking win, because he deserved to win too. Like, he deserved to win.
You don't make the team, and I'm going to guess, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but the depression really ramps up and you really are going downward inwardly, but outwardly you're just living it up partying wise, and you're going to do anything.
Yeah, that was my way of coping, but in reality I was suppressing a lot of emotion. And actually the night, early morning when the Olympics were happening, I was watching all my friends compete. Like that's when I was like starting to drink and like take painkillers and drugs. And like at that point I tried, like other drugs, kind of anything and everything that like came about. Just, I didn't care anymore.
Other drugs, like when's the first time you do blow? Is that after you don't make the Olympic team?
No, actually, that was before with other unnamed skiers. And yeah, that was the first time. It's crazy, man. I honestly didn't like any of the hard drugs at all at first. Like I was pretty goody, like not goody two shoes, but I was scared of all that crazy shit.
At this point in life, you're spiraling out of control drinking, and you're pretty bummed on this whole not making the Olympics thing, which is totally understandable. There's a whole Gus Kenworthy saga that I'm not even going to bring up, but I'll just mention it. That had to be a weird thing in your life too. Did you and Gus ever make up for that?
Yeah, Gus is my boy, like, till death. But that whole thing was just, I didn't really think it out too much, but it was never bashing anything to do with him. Like, why the fuck are you coming out to millions of people and just trying to look for some sort of personal gain? It was definitely out of line for me to do that. And, sometimes I think that, yeah, maybe he deserved it at that point because he does it to other skiers and whatnot. But honestly, it's like type of beef where, you punch me, I punch you, whatever, and high five later, hug, it's all good.
Your comments had more to do with him cashing in financially opposed to him becoming whole by doing it, where really to him, it wasn't that, but you still perceive it as that. Yeah.
And I guess, thinking about it now, it's kind of tough because it is so great, that whole experience has to be the best thing in the world. And, I was really not trying to rain on that parade at all. I just thought it was kind of an unnecessary way to go about it at that time. And, I had kind of some information that nobody else could really have. And I kind of based some of my comments off that.
It was a pretty big issue that put you in the center of a lot of press because there's a lot of press around that at the time. Your sponsors have to realize that something's going on with you. And I'm sure you lose some. You end up with Ruroc Helmets, which is an interesting choice because while my kid loves Star Wars and would probably think it's a cool helmet, that's my kid.
You do not. Yeah.
I wouldn't wear one personally. I might laugh if I see a friend wear one. If a friend told me they're getting sponsored by them, I get that money plays a big part in it, but it's a different look for a dude like yourself. What went into that thought process?
Actually, I think at that point I was probably so high I thought I was a paintballer. So I probably thought I needed a face mask to protect myself from paintballs. That's what I'm going to say about it. I don't know, dude. You want to know the truth?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so how I lost all my big sponsors was pretty kind of fucked up. Not going to lie. And a lot of this led to my severe depression. After the Olympic year and whatnot, I had verbally promised contracts with a lot of the companies I was working with. Definitely my biggest contracts. And verbal agreements that we were going to re-sign and it was going to be for less, which was totally correct. I hadn't been performing as well. And they both just straight fucking dropped me. And then I was at Dew Tour at the beginning of the season with no sponsors left. And I'm sitting here like watching all these kids go through and train. And they were all robots, dude. And I'm like, do I love this? Do I love this? Fuck no. No, I do not. So I decided not to compete. And that meant I wasn't going to make these other events and stuff. So at that point, I went from making a shitload of money and being somewhat a professional skier, I guess.
You've passed up-and-comer, but not established veteran.
To literally nothing. Like literally snap of a finger, nothing.
And it's the first time in your life where you've been nothing because you've always been something your whole life.
No, I've considered myself nothing for a long time.
But you had the successes that helped build your self-esteem. I mean, you always had gymnastics. You always had different things that made you feel good about yourself. And now you don't have any of it.
No, I remember a lot of times driving around town in Park City. And, a lot of people just immediately kind of didn't like me, or people liked me for all the wrong fucking reasons. They're like, dude, I love you. Come here. Like, or like, they're just like immediately like, yo, Schlopy's cocky now, blah, blah. So, I mean, I really fucking did not like myself. I was trying to be happy and I tried to be like, yo, but you won the X Games. You should be happy. You should be stoked that you did that. But it's like, nah, but people just fucking don't like you because, like they just assume you're just a cocky piece of shit. And, I just like really didn't like being in that position where I couldn't handle it at that point because I was way too oversensitive and way too hard on myself. So, yeah, it was really, really difficult.
Your emotions are in the toilet at this point. You've decided to throw in the towel on skiing at that contest. You're like, I'm not doing it, which affects the rest of your year. Depression set in. You've gotten into Ruroc Helmets, but you don't really remember them because you were so high and you thought they were paintball helmets. So we'll look at that as almost the end of the first part of your ski career, because that's not the end of skiing for you by any means. But at this point in your life, you're over skiing. Maybe not over skiing, but you almost hate it because maybe you're defined by it and you hate yourself. I don't know. I'm just saying some things. And you're depressed. And you put a post on New Schoolers about a week ago, and it was ridiculous. I mean, looking at it, it was like, how could this have happened to this kid? But really, drugs are something that once they take over, they make everything else disappear. People abandon their kids and do all different kinds of things to get them. And it sounds like you got into a terrible cycle of drug use. And I guess first, how does the partying evolve to like crack, heroin, and meth and shit like that? How do you even get into that shit?
Shit is crazy, man. Like, I tell you, a month or two before I ever even tried any of that, I would have told you with a complete straight face, I do not like any of those drugs. None. And coming up into the Olympics, I was in great shape, healthy, sober, like almost a year, like just doing nothing, didn't care anymore. And then that happened, and I had a goal set that wasn't timeless. It was very dead set, and it was a very deadly goal. It was make the Olympics or I'd rather be dead. And I think I took that way too seriously. Worst goal I ever set. And afterwards, I just went crazy. I'd party, be drinking, take whatever drugs were in front of me. And, when I felt horrible in the morning, I had painkillers from surgeries and injuries where, I just take those and I wouldn't be hungover anymore. And, my shoulder wouldn't hurt, my knees wouldn't hurt. And kind of got to any excuse possible in the book. I'd be like, you stub my toe, and I'd be like, dude, I need something. That's how it all started.
Does it evolve to where you run out of pills and stuff and you have to find something else? Because I guess what I don't get, I mean, I totally understand having access to a lot of pills, having surgeries, and drinking, I mean, is part of the culture there. But where does the Park City kid start smoking crack? How does that even happen?
Yeah, it sounds pretty fucking crazy, right?
It doesn't sound crazy. I mean, it's like you're in a hole, and I understand you're going to try things, and I understand that drug, once you do it once, I think you want to do it a lot more. But how does it happen the first time? And I can see blow being popular in your town, but not crack.
Nobody at all. I gave up on myself, and I gave up on myself professionally. Like, I pursued it. I didn't want to exist anymore. I just felt worthless for some reason. Like, completely worthless. And, I couldn't pretend like I had some sort of happiness. That fake happiness was gone. I tried to fill it with something else. I felt empty. I don't know if concussion came into play or what, but, the world just didn't feel good anymore. Everything felt horrible, and I started using these drugs, and those drugs made me feel like I had that void, or like kind of that happiness and that confidence started being filled again. So I started using whatever to try and pretend like I was doing okay, because I didn't want anybody to know I was not doing okay at all.
And I get that, but like, how do you get cracked? Do you go to that shitty street in Salt Lake and look for a dude? Like, I just don't even understand how, like...
Yeah, no, it's better. You should not understand how to do that. So basically, things got so bad, I ran out of money, couldn't buy any of these drugs or whatever anymore, and I didn't know how to get anything, but people started having, like, heroin and shit, and I was like...
In Park City? Like, your friends there?
No. These people don't exist as far as you guys are concerned. This is the low, gone. Like, it sucks, dude. It's like the worst feeling ever. And I started getting sick every day, where I'd wake up and I'd be shaking and sweating. I was horrible. And, I needed to get the thing that made me feel like I could be confident and happy. And so once those painkillers and stuff ran out, the people I were around, the people that do this, they were using drugs like heroin, and, they had like the most, whatever, they had all these drugs. And I ran out and I tried that. And then later down the road, I was at the homeless shelter. And the homeless shelter, people there are broken and they are doing drugs. And that's how they fill that sadness. And I was there literally kind of on par with them, but totally not, I guess. And one day I just fucking walked up to a dude, and he's they say black, white, which is heroin, crack. And I just was like, both. And then that's the first time I tried crack, and I don't know why.
Huh.
I just gave up, and I was like, fuck it, I want to try whatever. And ended up being every day heroin, crack, and I was taking Xanax for years at that point. And that is a deadly combo on its own, and I was using it every day or I could not function. And yeah, it got really, really horrible.
Here's, I guess, where I'm confused. How do you get from Park City to Salt Lake City to the homeless shelter? Because do your parents kick you out of their house, or do you not have anywhere to go? Or are you just like, hey, I'm going to go to Salt Lake City, find the sketchiest people I can find and surround myself with them?
You know, I guess logic doesn't happen anymore. You know, I can't really tell you a reason why I did it. It's like naturally, it's just where I went, and I went down to that level. I had no money left. My ski sponsors left me. Skiing left me. I felt very lost and ashamed. I was broke. I'm a great athlete, and I'm sitting here with nothing. I threw it all away, and, you know, I got kind of thrown away. Nobody fucking hit me up anymore. None of the people in the ski industry. It all just fucking dipped, you know, just completely detached. And I just felt, you know, fucking worthless. So I treated myself like a piece of shit on purpose.
And how long does this go on for? Like, are you living in the homeless shelter?
No, it's kind of fucking weird, but I was like driving my S5 down to the homeless shelter, and then I'd be down there all day, like trying to get drugs and stuff. And like, I don't know, it's pretty fucking pathetic. I hate talking about it.
But would you go get them and then go home? Was it you'd go down there as like that was your store?
No, it's like you get down there and then, you know, it's the block. So, you know, it's like gangsters and all that shit. And, you know, it's like, yeah, you get drugs or whatever and then leave and then just kind of stay around and maybe get more. It's just like, it's kind of like a magnet, this block where they have all these drugs, you know. It's like, you know, I call them like bags of life, where you go there and it's like, that's kind of like your life force. It's turns into your life completely. Everything outside is shut out, you know, and you start just all you care about. You fall in love with a fucking drug. It's your life. It's horrible. You cannot escape if you don't use any of this stuff, you know. Like I couldn't, you know, I was trying to pretend like I had all this energy and I was this good kid that, you know, I just wasn't anymore. I'd fallen down and broken myself. And, you know, I was sitting there like I can never build myself back up. I was once the best in the world. And now I'm a piece of fucking trash sitting on the side of the road, fucking digging through dumpsters, trying to get something to go sell for money so I could get drugs. And I went from best in the world to worst in the world.
That's a tough thing to live with. I could see trying to want to numb it every day. You're spending hundreds of dollars a day on this?
Yeah, at least $100, $100 to $300, you know, usually.
And how long does this last for? I mean, this is like one of those cycles of abuse where if it keeps going, you end up in debt or in jail. But how long do you end up doing it for?
7 months. 7 months was nonstop at the last point, where it was every day. You know, at the end there, I tried to kill myself a couple times. I survived trying to kill myself once.
You jumped off a cliff?
Yeah.
Into water?
No, onto the beach.
And it was like an 80-foot cliff or something like that.
Yeah, it was like 80 to 100 feet probably. It's like really steep at first, you know, like basically, you know, a sheer drop. And then it went into like a 50-foot sheer drop, 60-foot sheer drop. So, you know, tumbled and then flipped off. And yeah.
You hit the ground, you're alive? I mean...
Yeah, so I was like kind of up at the top. I jumped over the fence and I was like, fuck it. Like, I was like, I don't know why I'm alive anymore. Like, I don't have anything left. So I just jumped off and I woke up on the beach by myself. It's about 3-something a.m. I was out in California for my sister's graduation from cosmetology school. And, you know, it ended up with me jumping off a cliff and in intensive care with brain bleeding and punctured lungs, where, you know, after I landed, I had to crawl and kind of limp along the beach for about a quarter mile to a half a mile and then call an ambulance. If I wouldn't have woken up, I probably wouldn't have made it.
That's just insane. That wasn't the only time you've done that. There's been other times where you've had a gun to your head too, and there was a call from your dad. That was divine intervention.
Yeah. It's crazy, dude. I guess, the drug thing, I didn't want to be the guy who fucking killed himself, because, I just didn't want anybody else to hurt and feel my hurt. So I kind of started just like doing drugs or something because I just wanted to like make it seem more natural, I guess. Which is kind of fucked up and horrible to say, but want the truth, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like spiraling down into this world of nothingness, dude. Like it's just nothing. Like I just didn't care about myself. I cared so much about everyone else. I wanted nobody ever to feel the pain that I was feeling. It was so deep and horrible, and it's just it makes me fucking sick to think about it, honestly. Along that whole time too, something I kind of left out is I was dating a girl and she cheated on me with over 20 people, with a lot of which were my best friends. I had some best friends die from opiate abuse, and it's like it's just gotten to a point where it's just like this is enough, dude. Like I'm not gonna watch anyone else fucking die from this bullshit. I'm gonna stop being a little bitch and trying to kill myself, and I'm gonna take initiative and try to fucking get back on my feet.
20 people she cheated on you with?
Yeah.
Dude.
Well, over 20. And I was aware of one at first.
Were you just so messed up that you didn't know?
No, I destroyed myself over that, really. I just don't want to blame anybody.
It's all her fault.
No, it's not.
I'm kidding.
It's not her fault at all. It's my fault, dude. I chose to do drugs and whatnot to cope with it. And, a lot of the times where I was affected by information about, her cheating, I ended up fucking up a contest, and that also kind of led to down spiral.
So we don't like her either. Or I don't.
She's all right. I forgive her. Whatever.
That's nice of you. I don't. But that's me. So at this time, too, are you shooting heroin?
No, I actually never used a needle, and I guess that's one thing I could be kind of proud of.
It's supposed to be so much better that way.
Yeah, apparently, but I just did a shitload more, either snorting or smoking it.
That's one good thing, like you said, that you didn't do.
Look for the positives, man.
I'm going to go to one more negative before we get out of this downward spiral.
Dip back into it.
Yeah, so you had to steal to get money, right?
Yes and no. I've sold a root beer once when I was 12, and I've never, ever, ever touched a finger on anything that wasn't mine with the intent to keep it, right?
Right.
With that sense, I guess it was more hypothetical where I was around people doing that kind of shit. I didn't fucking need to go into cars and steal shit, but I was around people doing it, and in that case, I feel guilty.
You've never broken a car window and taken a stereo and then tried to figure out where to fence it, per se?
No. Luckily, I stopped. I got caught before that shit.
How did you get caught?
Well, actually, at an outlet mall, I guess, yeah, the police just kind of, I don't know, I think the girl I was with looked deranged or something. Someone called the cops and, arrested us. I'm honestly, that day was the biggest blessing fucking ever.
Well, you needed an arrest.
Yeah, waking up, in a holding cell on like a cold floor, withdrawing from every drug, the 3 worst drugs to come off of. That's something I'll never forget. And I'm grateful for it, but it makes me fucking sick to think about it.
So you get arrested it doesn't even matter what you get arrested for. What does your family say throughout this 12 months or whatever? What are they thinking? Do they reach out to you? Do they realize you have a problem? Or do they ignore it and think you'll find your way?
Yeah, well, like I said, I was like really good at faking being okay. So yeah, at the end there, they knew something was going on. My dad says when I'd ask him for money, he would just give it to me knowing what I was going to do with it. And he was trying to keep me alive, which sounds fucking crazy. And as a parent, what do you do? And what he did was the right thing in a fucked up way.
You can look at it as enabling, but then your dad looks at it as he's going to get the money from somewhere anyway.
Yeah, it's tough to, what do you do in that situation? Nobody can answer that. I think my dad he knew I was a smart kid, and he knew that I would get my shit together at some point. He had faith in me.
You need at least someone to have faith in you. Rock bottom happens when you get arrested, I would think. You realize on that cold floor that while you're puking and sweating and wishing you were dead, that you've got to change your life. And how does recovery happen?
In the holding cell in the jail, one of the officers, a woman officer, showed me a picture of me in the past, like looking really healthy and in shape like crazy when I'd been training for the Olympics. She showed a picture, my fucking headshot, or whatever it's called.
Mugshot.
What is that called? My mugshot. She held them next to each other and she's like, look at this. She's like, this is sad. She's like, that's an Olympic athlete. She's like, this is a piece of shit, basically.
Faces of meth.
Yeah, dude, I was like 140 pounds. I'm usually 180 pounds.
You're like 6'1". You're a big skier.
Yeah, about 6 foot, 6'1". And yeah, I'm little skinny stick, dude, terrified, broken to shit. Didn't know what to do. I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't think there was a chance in hell that I could ever smile again. Never.
That's just sad.
Yeah. And so, after we got in trouble, I went to rehab in Texas where, my dad and everybody, parents, they're like, hey, so we said you have to go to this rehab, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, well, cancel my flight because I need to pay for it because I want to go kind of thing. And after jail, I like kind of had started using again because I was so sick. And I had like stuff like stashed and, I was kind of getting right back into the sickness and right back into the bullshit.
You're an addict at that point.
Yeah, I just wanted to keep numbing that pain, and I didn't want to feel the horrible shittiness that I was soon to feel anyways when I went to rehab. I almost asphyxiated like on my own throw up the first night, and I was so sick, dude. They'd said they'd really never seen anyone as sick, or not in a long time at least, and that kind of says a lot because they see a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just started digging up motivation in there, even though I was like kind of shaking and sweating and full on in bed for 17 days.
Damn.
Pretty much. I had to force myself to get out of bed. Tried to go on a walk on a trail or something, but I'd collapse. Just had nothing left. But then I started, I was like, fuck, I'm going to go hit the gym. Like, I'm going to try and ski again. Like, just some crazy shit in my head where I still thought I was like a pro skier. So I just started training and I didn't feel like me. I didn't have me in me anymore. I was, completely drained and empty and, just living off hope at that point, hoping for a miracle, really.
But you have to make the miracle, right? I mean, you can't just hope for it. It's hard work on your end, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And, right out of rehab, it wasn't, just a perfect picture. The first thing that pretty much happened when I got out of rehab is I had all these horrible things happening where I'd listen to music and it would make me think of like using, fucking crack, and it made me go crazy. And I'd like lash out and start punching shit and crying. And, I was in pain and I just hated it. And I was in rehab and like all these like kind of like gangster brothers come over, if you will, these black dudes like, man, like don't bring your shit to the streets. And then they saw I was crying and they're like, oh dude, what's going on? I explained it to them and like we were just kind of all hugging, and it was like kind of reminded me like this is all kind of like a brotherhood of people who have been suffering, and like to rise up. It's like you kind of it's nothing's impossible, really, is how I see it. I think anything's accomplished. You can accomplish fucking anything in the world if you have a goal and you believe it. If you're not ready to like give up, dude, it's like once you give up, then you're done. But until then, like nothing is fucking impossible.
I would think you'd be a little bit more realistic with goal setting compared to when you set them in years past.
Yeah. No, I set goals that are more timeless and don't have such an abrupt and crazy downfall if not achieved.
One thing I'm thinking about throughout this whole thing is you've hit your head a shitload, like a ton.
Yeah.
CTE is a big topic now. Like every NFL person is going to have it at some point in their lives, even if they're a kicker. No, I don't think that's true. But a lot of the NFL guys are getting it because they hit their heads really hard a lot. And you do that as well. Is that something you ever think of? And do you think that could have helped change some brain chemistry in terms of your depression?
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of some craziness behind everything that's happened. Don't really know exactly what it is or why, but after these concussions and stuff for a long time, and with the substance abuse, I started feeling like pretty just sad. Sad was like kind of the only emotion I had. Like it was, almost emotionless otherwise. And the world just didn't have the same vibrant feeling. There was no colors, it was like really horrible kind of. I did some things on purpose, like such as posting my story on New Schoolers in order to keep working my way back up to greatness, because I felt like, I don't know, I feel like skiing is my home and my community, and initially I think I really, if I could, tap in there and, give some people, some information and some insight as to what's happening to, more people than you would think around them, especially, a lot of my friends, go through the same thing, or, they've even passed away because of it. And, I was like, shit, I'm going to just take initiative here and kind of throw myself in like a very vulnerable kind of shitty position where I'm admitting to a lot of fucking horrible things that are painful to admit. But, I think that it should be known that it's not crazy and it's not out of the normal in a way, because people feel stuff. They have emotions, and, some people are more emotional than others. And, worse things happen to people or better things happen to people, and people respond according to the scenario in certain ways. So, yeah, I just think that nobody should give up hope, If I can exemplify what could happen if you don't give up hope in a great way, then I'd love to do that.
How old are you?
25.
So you're 25 years old, 4 years out from almost making the Olympic team. You're still really in the prime of your life physically, although you've done some things to your brain, not your body as much.
I feel better today than I did 10 years ago mentally.
And it's the first time you've been sober in 10 years?
No, I had times in between, but I'm just saying, as far as my emotional clarity, I guess, I feel so much better, and, even cognitive clarity. And I skied today, and I felt the best on skis I have in a long time.
And with your skiing at the level that it was, while the tricks aren't going to be like riding a bike, they don't come back that easily, you have a lot of muscle memory from gymnastics and from skiing. And with time spent, there's no telling how good you can be on your skis again. And in looking at Spriggs this year, I see, we had a podcast, he had some issues going on. He is absolutely crushing it this year. He's putting out a ton of content, and he's just on fire. And that could easily be you. I don't know if you communicate with him much, but it's almost like you guys could lean on each other to push each other, to keep each other straight, I guess.
Yeah, dude, I'm all about it, man. Anybody pushing to strive for betterment of themselves, I am all for that. Like, dude, I mean, if you've gone to where I have, where you're sitting broke in a fucking homeless shelter, doing up to 3 grams of H and a couple grams of white every day, depressed, and, destroying my body almost and my brain almost. But even where I'm at right now, this is a miracle. It's a miracle, and I just don't see it stopping. Hopefully.
Hopefully it won't stop. And speaking of the future, what's next for you?
Right now, dude, I just am content in life. I've taken the time to kind of tend to a lot of emotional things that I never tended to, because I'd learned how to suppress fear and emotion in order to compete. So I think a lot of that had been locked into my life. So I had a lot of difficulty coming out of the depression I was stuck in, but all of a sudden kind of clicked, and I was like, every memory I had also had a bright side, and there was love and happiness. That's become my life again. Like, I feel happiness and I feel the good that I haven't felt in such a long time. And, at this point, it's kind of euphoric in a way that is so much more rewarding than anything I've ever done in my life.
You were the best in the world, then you were the worst in the world, and now you're just striving to be normal, and who knows what the future will hold after that. And I want to say thank you, man. Your story, it's a crazy one, dude. I mean, you grew up like an all-American kid, and when I say that, I mean divorced parents and living in Park City, and, it's a privileged all-American kid, and then it all comes crashing down after you have a lot of success. but you're only 25, man. The future can hold a lot. And I guess you take it day by day. I think that's what they say in those meetings, but one day at a time or something like that. And I think that's really important to do. And who knows, man? There's an Olympics in 4 years. You're going to be 29 years old, and who knows what can happen as long as you don't put a goal on it.
Exactly. My goal right now is positivity, and it's great. I hope people can learn from my story and whatnot, and maybe make some sense of some things that didn't make sense before. But it's obviously a little hard to talk about, but, thanks for listening.
You seem to share a lot, and I thank you for doing that, man. And I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully I will see you soon. I'll buy you a soda.
Sounds good. All right, brother. You take it easy.
So that was time with Alex Schlopy, and I want to wish him the best in his recovery. He's young enough to where he can be back on the top of the ski world. Only time will tell if he will make that happen. Speaking of being on top of the ski world, next week I have Nick Gepper. He was one of the favorites to win a gold medal in slopestyle at the Sochi Games, and he ended up with the bronze. He's a talented, misunderstood kid who shares some really surprising things on the podcast. I'm not going to talk about them here, but you can find them out next week, as it's very surprising to me. Before I get out of here, I need to thank you for listening to the show. I need to thank my sponsors for supporting the show. They are Evo.com, Rescue Water, the Summit at Snoqualmie, and 10 Barrel Brewery. Please support them as they support me, and I will talk to you next week.